tackle, he lays it back.
Like a meteor, James O'Connor exploded onto the rugby scene in 2008 when he debuted for Western Force at just 17 years of age. The youngest player to have ever played Super Rugby, fresh face, peroxide blonde with insane potential from the get-go. A rising star and generational talent. It's hard to believe a few years down the line he'd be dropped by clubs and finally get arrested. This is the story of James O'Connor, going from fame to shame and back again. Since that fateful day against the Waratahs, O'Connor has never failed to fill column inches for both outstanding gameplay and not so outstanding off-field antics. But as far as redemption tales go, they don't get better than his. From dizzying heights to all-time lows and back on the top again, James O'Connor has taken both fans and media on quite the ride. He's had his struggles, and they were many, but there is so much more to O'Connor's life than just that. The mercurial talent who has so often straddled the line between fame and notoriety, unbelievably will kick off his 17th season. Here, we look back on the incredible journey that brought him to this moment. Born in Southport, Queensland, on Australia's Gold Coast, he had an unusual family line, his parents being from New Zealand and maternal grandparents from South Africa. This meant he had masterclass distinction of representing any of the tri-nations he chose to play for. Now that's one stat ain't nobody gonna touch anytime soon. As the Aussies say, good on ya. At just 17, O'Connor was snapped up by then Super 14 outfit Western Force, and he certainly wasn't there to make up the numbers. On the 19th of April, the starlet was brought off the bench to face the Queensland Reds at the Suncorp Stadium and wrote his name into the tournament's history books as the youngest debutant ever. Quite poetic given that James O'Connor was born on the Gold Coast. It would be a bittersweet debut for O'Connor, as despite the personal achievement, the Reds won the game 29-12, torpedoing Western Force's playoff hopes. James O'Connor would start the following games against the Chiefs and the Canes, which saw him welcomed to the men's game with a good old-fashioned "How do you do" from Ma Nonu. What an initiation! Welcome to the big boys, mate. In O'Connor's third start, he announced himself to the league in style. With Force trailing 22-0 to Brumbies, 17-year-old O'Connor, up against Wallaby legend Sterling Mortlock no less, jinked through a tight line to get his team on the score sheet. His energy and quick play served as the catalyst that saw Western Force turn the tide, eventually running out 29-22 winners. His Western Force performances earned the Rugby Cherub a call up to the Wallabies later that year, and he made his debut in late 2008. O'Connor's first-class appearance came against the Barbarians in an Olympic centenary game at Twickenham, scoring 2 penalties and a conversion, but he wouldn't have to wait long for his first test. Now, before we go any further, please like and subscribe, it really helps out our channel. November 2008, O'Connor watched on as Quade Cooper left the bench to mark his debut for the Wallabies, scoring an important try on the way to victory over Italy. O'Connor's feet wouldn't touch the grass that day, but it wouldn't be long. O'Connor's chance to show Italy his abilities came just a few months later, and in June 2009 he lined up against the Azzurri to make his full test debut at the GOO Stadium. If there had been any doubt as to whether the youngster was ready to play the man's game, there would be none left after this match. O'Connor scored a hat-trick and helped the Wallabies to a dominating 31-8 win. The boy became a man. There had already been talk of the talent that the Wallabies had on their hands, and this performance in green and gold cemented that status. He had skill, charm, good looks and star quality. This early adulation, however, would cost him dearly later down the line. But let's stick with the good stuff for now, like the ice that ran through this young man's veins when he was on the pitch. Exhibit A, the 2010 Bledisloe Cup match against the All Blacks. Trailing by 5 points in injury time, the 20-year-old phenom cut through the line to score a try and level it up. Unperturbed by the pressure, he coolly stepped up to nail a tricky conversion, sending Aussies into raptures.
To beat New Zealand. It's down the middle. The drought has been broken. The Wallabies have won a famous test match in Hong Kong.
Exhibit B, the 2011 World Cup, where O'Connor's immense 52 points helped lead his Wallabies to a third-place finish. But there was one moment in particular that showcased the cool maturity of the young man. During the quarter-final against the Springboks, with the Wallabies trailing by just a point, he effortlessly kicked the penalty that took them into the lead and onto the semi-finals. What a man! Having scored 306 points in just 39 games, James left Western Force for the Melbourne Rebels in 2012. The following 18 months saw his career began to unravel. At the Rebels, he started well, but his time was plagued by injury and swirling rumours of bad behaviour. It unravelled in 2013. During the Lions tour, and with the Wallabies 1-0 down, O'Connor and Curtly Beale were snapped by the press at 4 AM in a fast food spot, in poor shape ahead of an important second test. An incident O'Connor himself said was an error in judgment. The Wallabies took no action this time. Australia won a tightly contested second test, but lost the third convincingly after falling apart in the final 20. A low point for both O'Connor and the rest of the team, and things got worse for the young man shortly after. The Rebels announced that they would not be renewing his contract. In other words, he got the axe.
You know, to have a contract from the Rebels and then after we lost, for them to pull it away, it was just, I guess, the nail in the coffin. It was rock bottom, you know, for me. I just wasn't enjoying my life as much as I thought, and I wasn't enjoying my rugby.
They cited his limited playing time because of injuries, though many suggested it was down to ill discipline. O'Connor's career was up in the air, and it was about to get worse. In September 2013, he wasn't allowed to board a flight heading to Bali at Perth Airport due to being intoxicated. Weeks later, the Wallabies ripped up his contract, leaving the 23-year-old out in the cold, clubless and crestfallen. The road to redemption needed to begin, and soon. Fellow Wallaby Brian Smith offered a glint of hope at London Irish, and O'Connor left his homeland for London. He had a solid season with the Exiles, showing glimpses of the incredible talent that we all knew he had. No match showed this more than when he scored both his first try and all 22 points in a win against Worcester Warriors. He kept his nose clean and scored 100 points across 14 matches in London before leaving at the end of the 2014 season. Naturally, O'Connor wanted Super Rugby to try and push for a place in the Wallabies' 2015 World Cup squad. He returned to Australia to play for Queensland Reds, and things were looking on the up. In yet another unfortunate series of events for the still young player, his season with the poorly performing Reds was marred by further injuries and a very public halftime spat with Reds teammate Adam Thompson. Ultimately, Wallabies coach Michael Checker left O'Connor out of his provisional 40-man squad, and just 3 months later, Queensland Reds released him from his contract, citing personal welfare reasons, another mark on his record. Never down for long, O'Connor headed to Toulon, joining fellow Wallabies Matt Giteau and Drew Mitchell, Fijian tank Joshua Tuisova, Mar Nonu and a team of Galacticos. But this would be where the Australian utility man would gain insight and a new perspective before finally hitting rock bottom.
He's working hard here. I've seen a huge improvement from the guy that I last saw in Australia.
Despite a tough personal time at Toulon, it's worth noting that O'Connor has name-checked Giteau, Mitchell and kicking coach Johnny Wilkinson as great sources of positive inspiration during this time. The story back then was an out-of-control O'Connor who was partying, drinking and abusing substances. The reality, though, is much starker. In a recent interview, he described his lowest ebb while at Toulon. All I wanted to do was sleep. If I wasn't at training, I'd be sleeping or at home watching TV. I was just so tired all the time, just so tired. He makes no bones about his wayward ways either, and went on to say, I hit a wall there, started drinking a bit, partying a bit too much, and my footy started to be affected physically and then mentally. My state of mind was making me struggle on the field. He was clearly in a tailspin and has recently talked about how he lacked purpose and confidence during this time. Despite this, he was performing quite well for Toulon, showcasing that fleet-footed, pacey, versatile player the world knew, with a killer sidestep and brute strength. He wasn't at his greatest, but he wasn't finished just yet, although his time at Toulon unfortunately was, after he was arrested in Paris for attempting to purchase drugs, spending 2 nights in a cell.
Former Wallaby star James O'Connor's career is in turmoil after he was arrested for allegedly trying to buy...
Enough has been made of that night in Paris and the fallout. We're here for what he's grown into since, and that begins with his 2017 move to Sale Sharks, the turning point. During his 2 years with the Sharks, O'Connor found yet another motivator in his road to redemption, and it came in the form of a men's well-being organisation which he hired to help him fix his woes. The Sharks didn't pull up any trees during O'Connor's time there, and despite making 31 appearances, neither did he. It was away from the field of play in rainy Manchester where he would work hard on himself and come back stronger. This is exactly what he did in 2019, leaving Sharks and heading back to Australian shores to sign again with the Queensland Reds under the ex-All Black Brad Thorne. Understandably wary, Thorne states that after chatting with O'Connor, he was most impressed by the fact that the Aussie didn't shy away from hard questions. With Thorne convinced the boy had learned from his past, the deal was done. In even better news for a man who had overcome his demons, he also re-signed for Rugby Australia, albeit with some contractual clauses around his behaviour, which was probably fair. In his first start since rejoining the Wallabies, Rugby's Peter Pan would play at centre in their record 47-26 Bledisloe Cup win against the All Blacks. The fact that the game took place in front of a record crowd in Perth, where it all began for O'Connor, is enough to bring a tear to the eye. Truly the comeback kid. The 2019 Rugby World Cup wasn't Australia's finest. They were knocked out by England in the quarters, but the fact that O'Connor was part of that squad is a testament to what a legend he was turning into, and better things were still yet to come. In a 2024 interview, James spoke about his favourite season in his rugby career, and unsurprisingly, it was the 2021 campaign with the Reds. Why? Because that was the year he captained his hometown club to Super Rugby Australia glory.
Just appreciative of where I've been and the experiences I've had to be able to come back here to my home, not only to my home state, but to be in my home country, to be wanted and to be offered to be in this position to take this team forward is,
And in true James O'Connor fashion, he'd scored all of his team's 19 points in the final, including a last-minute winning try, to beat the Brumbies and truly complete this incredible story of a man who overcame all the odds. At the end of the 2024 season, O'Connor made the switch to New Zealand, signing for Crusaders ahead of the 2025 season. At just 34 years old and a regular in the Wallabies setup, who knows what else this man has in store for us. Now, if we only talk about the rise and fall of JOC without mentioning the redemption, we do him and ourselves a great disservice. A legend of the game, an incredible talent, an immense point scorer, and a man who knows just what the pressures of the game can do to a young buck. Now, on the other side of it, O'Connor has become a leader on the field and an inspiration off it. Sometimes all you need is some self-belief and a few good people to help you on your way. As always, thanks for watching, smash the like button, leave your comment downstairs and subscribe. Stay tuned.